Chapter 2465. It's already the third day. When will father come back? I miss him. Amy sat on the steps outside the restaurant with her elbows on her knees and her chin in her hands. She squeezed her baby fat cheeks to make them look even more round and cute, but her sigh had a bit of hidden bitterness. Annie was sitting next to her with an easel in front of her. Although she was facing the bustling Aden Square, there was only one person in the painting. Mag was busy cooking in the kitchen. He was cooking eggplant with garlic sauce, and there was a plate of red braised pork on the side. Amy turned to look at the painting, swallowed, and sighed again. I'm so hungry, sis. Sis. Have some candy. Little Guai jumped out of the restaurant on Ugly Duckling and squeezed between the two of them. She opened her little hands, and there were 2 rainbow candies in her palms. Little Guai is so obedient. Amy peeled off the wrapper and popped the candy into her mouth with a satisfied smile. It's so sweet. And also smiled as she picked up the rainbow candies from Little Guai's palms, peeled off the wrapper, and fed them to Little Guai. Big sister, and you can have some. I have a lot more. Little Guai shook her head as she took out another handful of rainbow candies from her pocket. And was slightly taken aback before she put the candy into her mouth with a smile. Meow, Ugly Duckling, who had been demoted from a pet shop to a steed, raised its head and meowed a few times. All right, I'll give you one too. Little Guai picked up a rainbow candy, and was about to peel it for Ugly Duckling. Ugly Duckling wagged its tail, and its eyes narrowed with joy. Ugly Duckling, you're not allowed to eat candy. Amy's stern voice sounded. Little Guai immediately stopped what it was doing, and Ugly Duckling's expression collapsed as it looked at Amy with an aggrieved expression. Look at you, you're getting rounder and rounder. You're going to become a ball soon. But where are your wings? Where's your slender neck? Where's your swimming paws? Amy looked at Ugly Duckling with disappointment. When are you going to become a white swan like this? Meow, Ugly Duckling's ears drooped as it moved closer to Anne. And smiled as she rubbed its head and pinched its chubby cheeks. Then, she signaled Little Guai to put away the candy. Ugly Duckling was indeed too fat, and it had been secretly eating countless snacks with Little Guai during this period of time. Although the fat and round tangerine was very nice to touch and was very cute, it was true that candies could not be eaten anymore. It actually got fat from eating. How pitiful. Little Guai threw the candy into its mouth with a pitiful look on its face. Meow meow. Ugly Duckling fell to the ground and shut itself off. However, Ugly Duckling's wings are about to grow out. Look, the small wings are about to become big wings. Little Guai pointed at Ugly Duckling's back with a muffled voice. Amy pursed her lips and said, That's just a pair of small wings that have become fat wings. Let me take a look. When can they become real wings? Little Guai stroked Ugly Duckling's small wings with her little hand, and specks of golden light appeared on her fingertips before disappearing into the wing tattoo. It was as if a layer of gold had been tattooed on it. Ugly Duckling, which was lying on the ground with its head drooped, suddenly raised its head, and a golden light flashed through its blue eyes. It raised its head and let loose a roar. Meow, a pair of golden wings extended from Ugly Duckling's back, and the dazzling light was even more dazzling than the sun. Furthermore, the wings that had appeared this time were no longer soft and adorable. Instead, they were a pair of large wings with a wingspan of over a meter. Meow meow. Ugly Duckling turned to look at its wings with a dumbstruck expression, and was at a complete loss. Wow! It really is a pair of big wings. Amy's eyes lit up as she stroked them. They look like chicken wings. Anne's eyes were also glowing with excitement. Ugly Duckling, hurry up and take me flying. I want to fly. Fly high. Little Guai urged as it pinched Ugly Duckling's ear. Ugly Duckling was a little dumbstruck, but it didn't dare to disobey Little Guai's orders. It flapped its wings lightly, and disappeared on the spot. In the next instant, it appeared 100 meters above the center of the Aden Square. So fast. Amy was a little surprised. Meanwhile, Anne switched to another piece of paper, and a pair of golden wings had already appeared on it. So, where did Mr. Mac find this little guy? On the second floor of the magic potion shop, Crassus took a sip of wine as he looked at little Guai, who was flying around on a fat flying cat, with a complex expression. Julian was silent for a moment before saying, "I heard that the elven race underwent a mutation, and Irina took away a little elf." "That's a little elf, but this little guy isn't a little elf." Crassus shook his head. However, a thought quickly occurred to him, and he turned to Julian with a complex expression. "Do you think it's possible that she's also? How many people in this world do you think are capable of such a feat?" Urian's voice lowered slightly. Crassus smiled. "Even you and I can't do that. How many people in this world can?" Then, both of them fell silent. "I don't think I said anything about my last disciple, right?" Crassus broke the silence after a long while. "How dare you think about something like that? Aren't you afraid that you'll lead her astray?" Julian pursed his lips with a mocking expression. Crassus smiled sheepishly, and didn't retort, which was rare for him. Little Guai was flying around the Aden Square on Ugly Duckling's back, and its golden wings were glowing, attracting a lot of attention. "What's that?" "A cat that can fly. It should be some kind of magic beast. It's so fat and adorable. This cat looks so familiar. It looks like the one that belongs to little boss Mamie. But why does it have wings? There's a cute little fellow on the cat's back. Isn't that little boss Mamie's? But it looks so dangerous." People were looking up at it. They were amazed and worried at the same time. In the distance, the Great Temple's patrols had already discovered the commotion. Chaos City had a no-fly rule, but when they saw a fat cat flying in the sky with a little lowly who looked only 1 or 2 years old riding on its back, and heard that it belonged to Mamie's family, their expressions became gentler. Gina walked out of the ice cream shop when she heard the news. She smiled helplessly when she saw little Guai flying in the sky. However, she still kept a straight face, and sternly said, "Little Guai, come down. Don't mess around. Ugly Duckling, come down. Let's go eat ice cream." Little Guai patted Ugly Duckling's head when it hurt her. Ugly Duckling, which had already gotten used to flying, immediately changed its direction, and dove towards the ice cream shop's entrance. Then, it landed on the ground, rolled a few times, and only stopped when it bumped into Gina's leg. Meanwhile, little Guai jumped down from Ugly Duckling before it landed, and jumped straight into Gina's arms. Mother, look. Ugly Duckling can fly. When can we eat the roasted swan?" Little Guai asked in a baby voice as it hugged Gina's arm. End of chapter. Chapter 2466. Since Meg wasn't around, Mamie's put up a notice to close for a week straight away. However, Mia felt bored, so she continued to open the ice cream shop, and Gina helped out in the shop. Swans are so cute. How can they be roasted and eaten? Gina smiled as she reached out to scratch little Guai's nose. Then, she looked at Ugly Duckling, which was squatting on the ground and had already retracted its wings. Its golden wings had already disappeared, and turned into a mark on its back. Compared to its originally dim color, it seemed to have a layer of gold lining, and it looked rather impressive. Don't fly around on Ugly Duckling in the future, especially during the day. You'll be caught, Gina instructed little Guai with a serious expression. Oh. Little Guai nodded obediently, and didn't forget to make a face at Ugly Duckling. "Your Highness, little mistress drank some fruit juice and has fallen asleep," Phyllis said with a sense of relief as she walked into Irina's office. "It's been hard on you," Irina said as she looked at Phyllis, who had obviously lost a lot of weight over the past few days, and even had 2 obvious dark circles under her eyes. Over the past few days, she finally understood how hard it was for Meg to raise Amy alone. Because she saw how hard it was for Phyllis with her own eyes. A small baby wouldn't do things according to your wishes at all. "It's okay. I'm fine." Phyllis smiled, but couldn't hide her fatigue. "Drink this glass of water and have a good sleep. Today, you just have to hand the child over to Ashley." Irina picked up a glass of water beside her, and dripped a drop of milk of life into it. The rich scent of life instantly filled the entire office. Just a whiff of it was enough to make one feel refreshed. Phyllis took the glass of water and drank it in one gulp. Then, she looked at Irina with a serious expression, and said, "Your Highness, I really only need to have a good sleep in the future. I don't need something as precious as the milk of life." This was the milk of life that could save lives. Now that the tree of life was gone, every drop of the milk of life that the princess had was gone, she felt very embarrassed to waste it on her. "Idiot, you've already reached the bottleneck. Go back and take a nap. When you wake up, try to break through the bottleneck and see if you can break through the threshold of level 7, Irina said as she gave her a chestnut. "Oh." Phyllis covered her forehead and left. She was still a little confused. She was just taking care of the baby. How did she reach a bottleneck? Closing the office door, Irina sat at the desk in a daze and whispered to herself, "I don't know if he's doing well over there. It's still a bit reckless to go down alone. Moreover, that thing seems to have appeared again recently. I have to make a trip to Abyssal Island to take a look." Meg and Nancy had afternoon tea. The atmosphere was relaxed, just like 2 friends. Nancy seemed to be quite interested in his experience, so Meg had to make up a cliché story about an inspirational young man who kept innovating. However, she seemed to be very satisfied with the story. By the end of afternoon tea, her favorability towards him had increased by 2 points. "System, if this goes on, do you think she'll fall in love with me?" Meg came out of the coffee shop on the top floor with a strange expression. "Based on the current analysis, this possibility is extremely low," the system replied. Meg pursed his lips and did not refute. He could actually feel that Nancy's emotions towards him were more of a kind of appreciation. It was the appreciation of a superior person towards a rival artist, more or less with a sense of condescension. Of course, he was quite satisfied with this situation. This way, if he suddenly disappeared in the future, she would not have to frantically look for him. After returning to the dormitory, Meg left the building in disguise. There are many options for disguises, such as the staff. Why did you have to choose women's clothing? She sat in the passenger seat with a puzzled expression on her cold face. Is this the so-called women's clothing only once or countless times? Ah. Meg was stunned. Why didn't you say so earlier? Meg pushed the blame to her while taking off his skirt. She turned her face away and rolled her eyes. Moreover, even if he did not disguise himself, with his strength, it was still very easy for him to sneak out of the building without anyone noticing. After changing back into men's clothing and a new face, the flying car stopped in front of the gate of the largest trade city in Tucker City. Tucker Trade City was the largest and most comprehensive trade city in the entire underground city. It was also regarded as the trading hub of the entire underground city. All kinds of daily necessities could be traded here, from artillery to heavy ships. What do you want to buy? She asked. Let's walk around first. I don't know what to buy, so I'll broaden my horizons. Meg walked towards the machinery trading center in front of him. She frowned slightly but still chose to follow him. As soon as they entered the gate, a huge warship parked in the hall attracted Meg's attention. Yuan-level warship. It was eliminated by the military 200 years ago and is now a civil warship. She introduced it to Meg. How much is one? Meg asked. It's not for sale to you. Can't I buy it for my daughter as a toy? No. Meg reluctantly looked away from the warship. Although it was a warship that was eliminated by the military, it was still an advanced warship that the system could not build. The first floor was full of firearms. Meg took a quick look around. Other than a few military-supplied firearms, he could find all kinds of firearms here. Firearms are sold like cabbages. Aren't you worried about gunfights every day? Meg could not help but ask. You need a document to buy a gun, and every gun is recorded. All the information about the gun used in the crime can be found immediately, she answered calmly. Meg nodded thoughtfully. It sounded like there was nothing wrong with it. Shopping without buying anything in the afternoon completely suppressed Meg's spending power. In addition to the machinery trading center, Meg also went to several daily necessities centers. Compared to firearms that could only be bought by big arms dealers, those small commodity wholesalers were more representative of the ordinary people in the underground city. After one round, Meg felt a sense of familiarity. The underground world gave him a similar feeling to Earth in many ways. They had completely broken away from the feudal oppression and the ordinary people had more rights. Although the aristocratic families still had a lot of power, they could only hide behind the scenes and did not have much influence on the ordinary people. Their lives were so much better than the ordinary people of the Norland continent. On the way back, Meg looked at the skyscrapers outside the window in silence. She glanced at him and was a little confused. When do you think the people of the Norland continent can live like them? Meg suddenly looked back at she and asked. She looked into Meg's clear eyes and finally shook her head. She did not know and could not say. However, this idea of his was already very dangerous. Meg smiled and looked out the window again. That day will come. End of chapter. Chapter 2467. The popularity of the Chef King competition made #Hades Challenge rise to the top of the hot search list again. The juicy beef meatball that had been hammered 23,000 times was so delicious that the judges' souls left their bodies. It was really something to look forward to. That night, many people couldn't sleep because of the noisy hammering sounds upstairs. Many people sacrificed their lives heroically, and many people couldn't lift their arms the next day. Because the price of the ingredients was still affordable, many housewives were eager to try it. There were also bosses who captured Meg's hammering movements overnight, completed the programming, and created a beef hammering robot, which received hundreds of thousands of orders. There were even restaurant owners who accompanied their head chefs to create new dishes overnight, so that they could add a signature dish to the menu the next day. This was a carnival for foodies, and it also gave some people a new password to wealth. Meg didn't care about all this. He only cared about the rapidly increasing number of fans. It had just exceeded 1 million yesterday, and today it had successfully exceeded 3 million. Furthermore, it was still increasing at a terrifying speed. Wonderful. What's the point of cultivating? I can just become a superstar and become a god through incense. Meg used his mind to open the fridge, and poured himself a glass of iced orange juice. System, have you calculated the best solution? How can we ensure that the underground city doesn't wage war on the Norland continent? Meg asked in his mind as he drank the juice. This system has built 1 million data models based on the available information. In the end, it came to a conclusion, but this conclusion is a little strange. Don't keep me in suspense. Hurry up and say it. Meg was interested, and put down the glass in his hand. According to this system's professional model calculation, maintaining the current political structure of the underground city is the most stable solution for the Norland continent. Meg furrowed his brows, but he quickly put on a thoughtful expression. In the past tens of thousands of years, the political structure of the underground city has been relatively stable. Although there have been some changes and evolutions in the political structure with the development of technology and social changes, overall, the actual power of the underground city is still controlled by a few big families. In the past tens of thousands of years, the underground city has never launched a large-scale war or invasion on the Norland continent. If this balance is broken, the probability of the two worlds colliding will increase exponentially. The system said. So, perhaps the people of the underground city need to change, and some classes need to change too. However, the Norland continent doesn't want them to change the most. Meg frowned. Given the difference in power between the underground city and the Norland continent, it would be a one-sided massacre if the underground city started a war with the Norland continent. Currently, the one who was actively promoting the changes in the underground city was the Marshal of the Army, Ferdinand. Now that he thought about it, he was working under Ferdinand. This is going to be a little troublesome. Meg browsed through the information about the major corporations that the system had given him. Needless to say, Ferdinand must have done something to his wristband. Therefore, other than microsurfing and browsing some useless information, he did not do anything else on his wristband. The system's learning ability was indeed as powerful as he had said. It had already successfully hacked into the military's intelligence database and obtained first-hand top-secret information. Judging from the current situation, if he wanted to protect the Norland continent, he should join forces with the major corporations and destroy Ferdinand, the challenger to the old order. However, although he had the title of the most powerful person on the Norland continent, he was only a demigod after all. There was still a big gap between him and a real god, and the gap between him and Ferdinand was even bigger. Every corporation had more than one extraordinary behind them. If he were to go and talk to them about cooperation, it would be no different from sending himself to their doorstep. Moreover, as a transmigrator, he had an inexplicable fondness for people like Ferdinand who had a sense of responsibility for their social class. Strength is ultimately the foundation. Seems like I have to see if I can get anything from the Divine Monument first. Meg made up his mind and threw his messy thoughts to the back of his mind. Chief, this is Horace's statement and a list of names. These scumbags. Bastards. Outside the interrogation room, a middle-aged policeman sent the interrogation record to the chief. He could not hide the anger in his expression. Thank you for your hard work. The chief reached out and patted him on the shoulder. He glanced at Horace, who was fixed on the medical bed, and turned to leave. This incident was no longer something that he, the chief of the investigation bureau, could control. The game between the higher-ups would decide the final direction of this incident. As for this list of names, it was nothing. The military had already taken a clear stand to investigate this incident strictly, and the presidential palace had also given clear instructions. The Dixon family was very powerful, and the few corporations they were on good terms with had also started to exert their power, including the few celebrities who had self-destructed in the past 2 days. They were all just trying to divert attention and reduce the traffic of this incident. Of course, those few were not good people either. It was just that it was a pity that they had gone from canaries to abandoned pawns, and a superstar of a generation had been sent to jail. If that judge who had no clue could sentence Fergus to death, the problem would be much simpler. After all, that person was arrogant and ruthless, and was not influenced by the various powers. He had no qualms about causing trouble. Big sister, very soon, I will be able to avenge you. I will definitely make that fellow pay with his life. In a dim room, a young girl squatted in the corner and bit her lip. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. These 2 days, the microblogs were especially lively. Following Horace's fall from grace, from the godfather of movies to a rapist, the entertainment industry was like a domino effect. 8 A-list celebrities were exposed for their various crimes. The once glamorous stars had become bloody and cruel murderers and rapists, which made the onlookers' worldview explode one after another. More and more victims were speaking out, testifying against the filthy actions of those beasts. It was like a different world's version of the successive news, each more bizarre than the last, caused the popularity of Horace's incident to drop significantly. Even Fergus was gradually mentioned less and less, and disappeared from the search rankings. Meg woke up early in the morning and glanced at the microblogs. The people who had been exposed were all cannon fodder. No matter how glamorous a celebrity was, they were nothing more than pawns in the hands of the corporations. This moment could be said to be a true portrayal of this. Then let me add fuel to the fire. Meg searched for Fergus and found an article with the sister of the victim in the Fergus incident as the first person. After confirming the content, he forwarded the microblog with the attached text, "Some people should not be forgotten, and criminals are no exception." End of chapter. Chapter 2468. Thanks to Meg's series of tricks, the Chef King competition gained a lot of attention on the internet. It was locked in as the most popular variety show of the year in advance. Meg, as the cause of Horace's incident and the dark horse that had successfully advanced to the finals, had also become the focus of attention on the internet. As soon as this tweet was posted, it immediately caused an uproar on the internet. Brother Justice YYYDS. That's why I fell in love with this man. Justice has yet to arrive. Isn't that an absence? Is this a direct confrontation with the Dixon family? Sigma, degree winky face. In just a few minutes, the number of comments in the comments section had exceeded 10,000. Horace's incident had shaken the entertainment industry. More than 10 A-list celebrities had been exposed in scandals, and the public was jumping up and down in excitement. As a descendant of the Dixon family, Fergus received a lot of attention after Horace exposed that he had participated in the torture and murder of underage girls. However, as more and more strange news broke out in the entertainment industry, it successfully diverted the attention of the public, causing the popularity of this incident to drop again and again. It was already very difficult to see any relevant trending posts. On the eve of the highly anticipated final of the King of Chefs tournament, Hades, the most popular contestant, forwarded a tweet related to the Fergus incident. Soon, #Fergus murder case was pushed to the top of the hot search list. The Horace incident was triggered by Hades, and he was also known as Brother Justice. However, after that tweet, Hades did not post any other news. This made many people think that he was still under pressure and did not dare to participate in these matters. No one would have thought that after 2 days of silence, 2 hours before the start of the finals, he would actually directly fire at Fergus. Boss, Hades is tweeting again. Lucian, who was not fully awake yet, picked up Amos' call and heard his helpless and angry voice. What did he send? Lucian sat up in bed when he heard the name. It's Fergus this time. Amos' voice sounded bitter. This guy. Lucian had already seen Hades' latest tweet. When he saw those words, he was both angry and amused. The suicidal self-destruction of the A-list celebrities in the entertainment industry had finally managed to reduce the popularity of Fergus. However, Hades' tweet had once again pushed Fergus's incident to the top of the trending list, causing all of the Dixon family's efforts to go to waste. Who knew what expression the patriarch of the Dixon family would have when he woke up and saw this news? The presidential palace and the military had already expressed their stance, so the pressure on him had lessened a lot. As long as he was impartial on the surface, there would be nothing for him to do. However, Fergus's ending was supposed to be decided after the competition between the various parties. Now that Hades had brought his popularity back up, things were different. "Do we need to do anything now?" Amos asked. Lucian stared at the screen in silence for a while, then shook his head and said, "Don't do anything. This is an account protected by the military. Are you going to block it?" The final of the Chef King competition was about to begin. Hades had posted this tweet at such a sensitive time. He wondered if the McCarthy family had instructed him to do so. Sitting on the mountain and watching the tigers fight was obviously the best plan. "Okay, then I'll deal with the two directors first," Amos said tiredly. "Thank you for your hard work. After this incident, I'll give you a vacation. Take your family and children to have fun for a few days," Lucian said and hung up the phone. Sitting by the bed, Lucian looked at Hades's account in silence for a long time. "It seems that Nancy has extended an olive branch to him." Lucian shook his head. "However, can the McCarthy family really protect him for a lifetime? The Dixon family is not to be trifled with. Young people are so impulsive. This kid is still trying to increase the popularity of the show at this critical moment. It's so high that I'm a little scared." After director Johnny was woken up by his assistant, he smiled bitterly when he saw the top 3 posts on the trending list. The biggest beneficiary of Horace's incident was obviously the Chef King competition. The variety show, which had gradually declined, was revitalized. It even broke the broadcast record in the semi-finals. Hades could be said to be the biggest contributor. No one could compare to him. However, the popularity of the show was high enough. Today's final was very likely to set a new record. At this critical moment, Hades actually went to stir up Fergus's momentum again. 2 days ago, he even hinted to Hades that he should be careful with his words and actions on the internet during the recording of the show. Good Lord, it seemed that he didn't take it seriously at all. Although he had the McCarthy family behind him and never got along with the Dixon family, the other party was after all one of the top 10 conglomerates. He was not a sick cat. If he was pushed too far, everyone was afraid that he would bite. "You go out first, I'll make a call." Johnny got up and washed his face, then dialed Nancy's number. "I already know about it. You don't have to worry about it. Just get ready for today's final." Nancy's cold voice came from the other end of the phone. "Okay." Johnny answered obediently. Good Lord, it seemed that Miss Nancy already knew about this, and it was very likely that she instructed Hades to do it. He knew that Hades had lunch and afternoon tea with Nancy for 2 consecutive days. Even he, the director, was not qualified to enjoy this kind of treatment. Dixon Manor. Crack. The exquisite crystal bowl exploded into countless pieces on the marble floor. The head of the Dixon family, Merlin, looked at the microfeed with a dark face. Beside him stood a pale middle-aged man. His legs were trembling, and his voice was trembling as well. "Ma. Master, Fergus is still a child, Merlin glared at him coldly. "Shut up. You piece of trash, you raised such a useless thing. You've brought shame to the family." Thump. The man's legs went soft, and he knelt directly on the crystal shards. Merlin retracted his disgusted gaze from the man's hand and turned his head slightly. "This guy, I want him dead in 3 days." In the shadow behind him, the space distorted slightly, and a low voice replied, "Okay." Many people might have forgotten how the Dixon family started out. Merlin sneered. Angelina, who had just finished washing up, looked at Hades's microfeed with an agitated and worried expression. Horace's incident might have been a coincidence, but Hades's microfeed this morning was tantamount to a declaration of war against the Dixon family. Was it worth it to offend a terrifying conglomerate for a stranger? End of chapter. Chapter 2469. Meg didn't care if it was worth it or not. Anyway, he wouldn't be able to use this alias for more than a few days. It was just a pity that he would lose these 20 million fans. One had to know that these were all true fans. How could such a rare item appear on his body? He gained so many fans just by cooking. He increased the fans' fondness and stickiness with his character and persona. He did everything according to his own preferences. If he didn't like it, then he would face it head-on. He didn't care if he was a tycoon or not. If they really got into a fight, he would just run. Was being a tycoon a big deal? If they really got into a fight, Ferdinand would definitely let him get away. Meg's current goal was to complete the first mission as soon as possible. Then, he would go and comprehend the stone tablet and confirm if the legendary divine tablet was effective for him. As for rescuing the people of the underground city from the abyss of suffering and making their surfing life more colorful after meals, he would leave it to the other heroes of the underground city. As the representative of the Norland continent, his butt couldn't be crooked. He woke up, washed up, had breakfast, and then went to the dressing room to do his makeup to prepare for the official finals. Meg almost didn't communicate with the staff during the whole process to avoid causing trouble for them in the future. He thought that Johnny would come and talk to him, but he didn't see him until he was done with his makeup and was ready to go on stage. This made Meg's impression of Nancy improve a little. This maiden's values and facial features were really as upright as hers. The Chef King finals and Horace's trial made Hades' post very popular. Even if two A-list celebrities were exposed early in the morning, it couldn't suppress the popularity of this incident at all. On the other side, the Chef King finals were also in the 3-minute countdown. Meg entered the familiar arena under the guidance of the staff. There were only 2 desks left on the stage today. The judges were already in place. As soon as he entered, everyone's gazes fell on him. There was a complicated look in their eyes. Nancy, however, smiled and nodded at him. Meg returned a smile and then quickly went on stage to his own desks. The outcome of today's competition was no longer important to him. After the competition, he would follow Nancy to the McCarthy family. However, out of respect for his opponents and the audience, he would still try his best to serve a dish that would make everyone's eyes light up. Angelina then walked out of the contestant tunnel. Today, she was wearing a moon-white chef's uniform. Her makeup seemed to be a little thicker than a few days ago, but it still couldn't hide the exhaustion on her face. Her eyes, in particular, were bloodshot as if she hadn't rested well. "What's wrong with Angelina?" Johnny got up and looked at Angelina. It was terrible for her to appear on screen like this. "I was too excited about the finals today, so I didn't sleep well last night," said Angelina apologetically. "Hurry up and get a bottle of Vitality water to adjust her condition. Makeup artist, choose a pair of contact lenses for her to wear. Her eyes need to look more spirited," Johnny hurriedly instructed. The staff busied themselves and Angelina looked radiant again, at least on the surface. Angelina stepped onto the stage and stood in front of the console beside Meg, smiling at him. Meg nodded slightly. This girl didn't look like someone who couldn't sleep because of the finals. How did she end up like this? Then, he noticed that Angelina's favorability towards him was 96. Fuck, was she lovesick? Meg was shocked. This favorability was too exaggerated. It was probably difficult for couples to reach such a level when they were in love. But, he didn't do anything, did he? He even gave her the cold shoulder. Why did her favorability towards him increase overnight? Could it be, she was a masochist? Meg felt a little headache. He didn't want a girl to fall too deeply in love with this fake appearance. "Okay, everyone, get ready. The countdown to the live broadcast begins. 10. Johnson's voice rang out, and the judges and contestants at the scene immediately got into the zone. At this time, 1 billion people had poured into the live broadcast of the finals of the Chef King competition. Hades's post in the morning had brought a lot of attention to the Chef King tournament. Hades, YYDS. He's the one who posted the tweet, but why am I more scared than him? Bro, put the public chat on the protection. If something happened to him, it must be the Dixon family. I just want to know what kind of surprises Hades will bring us today. The comments flooded the screen crazily. The countdown ended and the live broadcast began. As usual, the host introduced the judges and the 2 contestants at the scene. Hades, who had infinite possibilities, versus Angelina, who was bold and imaginative. This battle was full of uncertainty and could be said to be very interesting. The rules of the finals had been changed compared to the semi-finals. There were no restrictions on the ingredients that the contestants could use. In other words, as long as the ingredients could be found in the dungeon, the contestants could make a request. This included ingredients that were worth tens of millions of copper coins. With the rich and overbearing temperament of the Chef King competition, they were absolutely full of confidence to play like this in the finals. So when the host announced the rules of the competition, the audience couldn't help but start to look forward to whether the ingredients that only existed in legends would appear in the competition. Unlimited ingredients. It's worthy of the Chef King competition. I want to see the frozen golden lobster. It's a top ingredient from thousands of years ago. There are only 12 of them in the entire dungeon, and the auction price is over 100 million. I want to see the deep-sea crescent fish. The last time it appeared was 500 years ago, right? The audience discussed enthusiastically, while Meg and Angelina had already begun to write down the ingredients they needed on the tablet. The ingredients that Angelina chose were reasonable and the price was moderate. The most expensive one was a deep-sea ice blue coral, which was worth 3.2 million, but it was far from the top ingredients that the audience expected, which somewhat disappointed the audience. However, this was Angelina's style. She used a bunch of strange ingredients to combine them into an imaginative delicacy that amazed everyone. Meg looked at the tablet and fell into deep thought. The audience didn't have much expectation for the ingredients he chose. After all, he chose extremely ordinary ingredients in the previous 2 rounds. Turning something rotten into something magical was a very important reason why Meg was so popular with the audience. Meg was indeed thinking, but he was also communicating with the system. System, have you found a high-quality substitute for pork loin? Just make it more expensive, don't save them money. Unlimited ingredients, we haven't fought such a rich battle yet, Meg thought. In the cave of the Heart of Darkness in the north of the dungeon, there is a dragon-like major monster called Medusa. Her kidney tastes excellent, and the taste and texture completely meet the host's requirements as a replacement for pork loin, the system quickly replied. What about the price? What's the price? Medusa has level 10 strength when it reaches adulthood. It's proficient in illusions and has a strong toxicity. It hides in the intersecting caves of the Heart of Darkness and is extremely difficult to kill, let alone capture. Now, the only living Medusa in Tucker City is auctioned for 300 million, and it's in the hands of the McCarthy family. That's it, then. Meg's mouth curled up slightly, and he wrote a line of words on the tablet. Let me tell you that this book will end in August. Recently, I've been preparing to wrap it up. I've thought a lot and overturned a lot of things, but I've roughly figured it out. I've been in a very bad state recently, so I'd like to apologize to everyone here. End of chapter. Chapter 2470. A fresh Medusa's kidney. The judges' expressions became very interesting when they saw the ingredients that Mag had chosen. It was not unusual to use a level 10 magical beast as an ingredient in the top circle. But Medusa was too precious and extremely rare. Only 2 or 3 of the judges present had tasted it. Contestant Hades's choice of ingredients today is a little surprising. Medusa is an extremely precious ingredient, and I have only tasted it once. The taste is memorable, and the price is also unforgettable. David smiled and said, I just don't know what kind of dish contestant Hades is going to make with the snake kidney. Wow! It's a completely unexpected choice. Medusa is an extremely expensive ingredient. 3 months ago, a Medusa was auctioned at the auction house, and the price was as high as 300 million. Fuck. I can't believe I can see a meal worth 300 million. To be precise, it's just a Medusa's kidney, which is worth less than 300 million. But under the premise that it's fresh, a Medusa worth 300 million indeed needs to be slaughtered for its kidney. If I remember correctly, that Medusa was auctioned off by the McCarthy family 3 months ago. The audience's enthusiasm was also ignited. This level of ingredient was not something that the public could get their hands on. It could only be seen in this kind of competition. Johnny was also a little confused. The rules of today's competition were set by Miss Nancy. With the power of the McCarthy family and the influence of the Chef King competition, as long as it was an ingredient from the dungeon, it should be no problem to get it to the arena within 10 minutes. But now, Meg wanted a fresh Medusa's kidney. The assistant had just explained to him how rare it was. This kind of magical beast was extremely violent and ruthless. There were only a few adult Medusas that could be brought back to Tucker City alive. He had no confidence to get it in 10 minutes. But it was the show's boast. It was written down in front of more than 1 billion live viewers. It would be too embarrassing if he could not get it. Miss Nancy, we've checked. There's only one living Medusa that has been brought back to Tucker City this year, and it was bought by Miss Norma from your family 3 months ago. You see. Johnny sent a telepathic message to Nancy, choosing his words carefully and anxiously. Norma. Nancy frowned. After a few seconds of silence, she said, leave this matter to me. The snake kidney will be sent to the show in 10 minutes. Thank you for your hard work. Johnny hurriedly said. The director would only cut Nancy's scene. The latter had already gotten up and left the stage, probably to contact Snake Kidney. Miss Norma and Miss Nancy were sisters of the same father but different mothers. They were both direct descendants of the McCarthy family and had a noble status. However, it was rumored that the relationship between the two of them was not very harmonious. Johnny was also a little worried. He did not know if Miss Nancy could successfully obtain the snake kidney from Norma. If she failed, he would have to think of a way to smooth things over. He was now regretting that he hadn't done a simple communication with the contestants before the competition. He should have at least given the contestants a range behind their backs. He was too careless. As an experienced variety show director, this kind of low-level mistake could be said to be because he was too arrogant. Meg then wrote down a few side dishes and spices. Compared to the Medusa's snake kidney, the other side dishes were extremely ordinary, and did not make things difficult for the production team at all. Meg's choice of the Medusa's snake kidney was actually more or less like a dragon's kidney. Compared to the giant winged dragons on the Norland continent, in Meg's heart, the dragon-like Medusa was more in line with the image of a dragon in his heart. Anyway, it was the production team who boasted about it. He did not care if they could get it or not. After the ingredients were chosen, the host received Johnny's request to save the situation. He then said, all right, now that the contestants have chosen their ingredients, we will need to prepare them from other sources because some of the ingredients are too precious. It will take about 10 minutes of waiting time. The countdown for the competition will start when the ingredients are presented. Looks like the production team was too careless. They actually made more than 1 billion viewers wait for 10 minutes. This is hilarious. I guess the director did not expect Hades to choose the Medusa's snake kidney, right? This year's Chef King competition is destined to be a classic. The audience was not too annoyed that they had to wait. Instead, they were gloating. This was the live broadcast of the show. More than 1 billion viewers were waiting. Of course, they could not just wait like that. Hence, the judges started to do their work to liven up the atmosphere so that the waiting time would not be so boring. 3 minutes later, Nancy returned to the judges' table and nodded slightly at Johnny. Johnny heaved a sigh of relief. Only then did he calm down. However, Miss Nancy should have paid a hefty price. This debt would most likely be blamed on Hades. Meg stood there calmly as he watched the judges make a fool of themselves. Then, he felt a gaze from the corner of his eye. It was reserved and passionate. Is this girl really so obsessed with my beauty that she can't extricate herself? Meg raised his eyebrows slightly. Superficial women only saw beautiful skin, and often turned a blind eye to his interesting soul. 10 minutes later, the ingredients were brought to the operating table one by one. The ingredients that cost more than 100,000 had their own individual display screen, allowing the audience to see the true appearance of the precious ingredients. The finale was the Medusa's snake kidney. This snake kidney was as bright as a ruby. As soon as it was brought to the table, a faint fragrance wafted out. There were still some golden blood vessels inside the snake kidney. It seemed to still be flowing. It looked like it had just been slaughtered and brought to the table. As expected of the top ingredient. It hasn't even been cooked yet, but it's already so fragrant. It's mouth-watering. Dave praised. Last time, I only ate a piece of frozen snake meat. It really can't compare to a fresh one. The Medusa's snake kidney is considered the essence of the Medusa. It is usually cooked by pan-frying or steaming. I wonder which one contestant Hades will choose to cook and what kind of snake kidney he will bring to the table. Old Hunter said with anticipation. The ingredients have been brought to the table. The competition officially begins. There are 2 hours left. Contestants, please begin. The host announced the start of the competition. Meg carefully examined the snake kidney in front of him. It was indeed a top-notch ingredient. Even though it had just been slaughtered, it didn't have the slightest smell of blood. Instead, it had a faint aroma that made him want to take a bite out of it. The Medusa's snake kidney was the size of an adult's palm. It was equivalent to 6 or 7 pig kidneys. It was more than enough to make a spicy Medusa's snake kidney. Yes, in today's competition, he wanted to show the dungeon citizens the charm of hype. Chapter 2471. Roasted pork loin was the dish Meg had prepared for the finals. But today, he had changed the pork loin into a snake loin. He wanted to make a roasted snake loin for the people of the underground city to broaden their horizons. Meg planned to finish it quickly today. The Medusa's loin was plump and tender, and it didn't have the slightest fishy smell. Instead, it had a unique fragrance, so there was no need to remove the fishy smell. This was also the attribute of a top-notch ingredient. It only needed simple cooking to release its hidden deliciousness. How to cut the plump snake loin was a skill. The snake loin was fatter than the pork loin, so Meg first sliced it into several equal pieces. He first cut it diagonally, then cut it straight in the opposite direction. His speed was slow and delicate, and it was somewhat instructive. The flour cutting knife was used to make the snake loin more flavorful, and also to make the finished product look better. After slowly cutting a few pieces, Meg began to speed up. The kitchen knife in his hand gently cut the snake loin like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. The incisions were clearly visible, but the snake loin didn't break. He was so fast that the human eye couldn't follow. I thought this was slow work, but it turns out that he's trying to teach me. Have you learned it? Eyes, yes. Hands, I've failed. It's okay, I'll be able to see it clearly as long as I slow it down 10 times. The audience was all praising Mag's knife skills. The slender snake loin was unbelievably obedient in his hands. Looking at the heavy kitchen knife, it displayed extremely delicate knife skills. It was a pleasure to watch. Contestant Hades' knife skills are definitely top-notch among the contestants in this year's competition. Whether it's the divine skill of dissecting sheep the day before yesterday or the exquisite knife skills of cutting the snake loin today, they're all eye-catching. Julia nodded. With more and more technological products entering the kitchen, and more meticulous division of labor, there were fewer and fewer young chefs who could calm down and hone their knife skills. Even though Simon had been eliminated in the top 4, he was still rather impressed with Hades as a young man. If the younger generation of chefs could be as down-to-earth and hard-working as him, there would be a lot of talented chefs in the cooking world. While Mag was busy, Angelina wasn't idling either. She had carved an ice crystal snow lotus fruit into an ice crystal phoenix, and her exquisite carving skills were equally amazing. However, Angelina's selection of ingredients was a little messy, so it was still difficult to guess what dish she was going to make. The loin was cut into a plate and marinated at the side. Meg then began to heat the oil in the pan. The dish. The most important thing about stir-frying was the heat control. Under a big fire, a little bit more heat control would make it look overcooked, and a little bit less heat control would make it look undercooked. It was a test of the chef's skill. This snake kidney was so precious, and it was impossible to find a second one in Tucker City, so there was no room for mistakes. The pork kidney was put into the pot with hot oil. It first slid in the pot for 30 seconds and then immediately came out of the pot to drain off the excess oil. Once again, he heated the oil in the wok and added in the spices until they were fragrant. Then, he added in the green and red peppers and other side dishes and stir-fried them until they were ready to be served. At this time, he poured the kidney into the wok and stir-fried it. He tossed the wok in one hand and the ladle in the other, letting the kidney and the red and green side dishes blend into one, flipping and jumping in the wok. The flame spread from the bottom of the pan to the center and jumped on top of the ingredients like a special effect. Fuck. The pan is on fire. Is this a special effect? Special effects for a gourmet show? Isn't this a little too lame? It's not a special effect. It's a special cooking method. It's full of smoke and fire. This scene is amazing. Please accept my admiration. The bullet screen was flooded with comments, and the audience expressed their surprise. This magical way of cooking was really amazing. Generally, a fire in the pan is a mistake, but contestant Hades is calm as if everything is under control. Is this the special cooking technique he's going to show today? David was surprised. Using fire to add color to a dish is a relatively common method in the traditional cooking of the Crossy, but it's usually used in the process of frying and roasting meat as a finishing touch. It's the first time I've seen such a fierce fire in the pan. I don't know if it's just for show or if there's a special effect. Old Hunter rubbed his chin and observed. From the charcoal roasted lamb chop to the handmade meatballs to today's spicy pork kidney, contestant Hades's cooking techniques are really flexible and versatile. I wonder if today's product will be as amazing as his performance. I'm really looking forward to it. A female judge said with a smile. Her words did not hide her admiration for Meg. The colorful ingredients were flipped upside down in the pan and jumped in the fire. The sufficient fire made the color and state of the dishes reach their best state. Turn off the fire and put the dish in one go. When the camera slowly zoomed in and focused on the fresh and glossy stir-fried kidney with red and green embellishments, only 15 minutes had passed. It's done. Meg put down the iron ladle and took half a step back. It's done. The audience was shocked. In the previous 2 rounds, Meg was the last one to finish, and it took him almost 2 hours. There was also a saying on the internet, the first one to start will lose. However, they did not expect that Meg was not only fast, but also ridiculously fast. In order to show off their skills or get more exposure, contestants usually cooked for more than an hour. That's it. I even took off my pants. I feel like I've seen something, but I also feel like I haven't seen anything. I didn't expect Hades to get up so fast. It's amazing. I just clicked on the live broadcast. What happened? The bullet screen was flooded with comments. They were also shocked by Meg's performance. Isn't this too fast? Johnny couldn't help but jump up from his seat. This was the final of the Chef King competition. It was the pinnacle of this season and also the perfect ending. The advertising revenue of this final alone had reached $2 billion. After receiving the money, he had to complete the quota. If Meg finished the competition in 15 minutes, how was he going to spend the next hour or so? Although Angelina was the most popular contestant before the show, everyone knew that the person the audience wanted to watch the most was Hades. Contestant Hades is a little surprised today. David glanced at the director's seat, thinking about how to extend the show's duration. Old Hunter looked at Mag with approval in his eyes, and said, "Speed is not the standard to judge a dish's quality." Contestant Hades showed us a special cooking method for the Medusa's kidney, and the finished product looks very good. I'm looking forward to it. I can already smell the aroma. It looks like a good dish. Nancy also smiled. Although she was a little surprised, the admiration in her eyes was more obvious. The staff stepped forward and brought the spicy pork kidney to the judges' table. Chapter 2472. The fresh and shiny stir-fried snake waist exuded a rich fragrance. It was the unique fragrance of the Medusa's snake waist, which had been sublimated in the cooking process. The plate slowly turned in front of the judges, receiving the serious scrutiny of each judge. The color, fragrance, and condition were all impeccable. Although the whole process only took 15 minutes under the watchful eyes of everyone, the finished product was flawless. At least it looked like that on the surface. The judges gave their comments on the fiery snake-like waist. Perhaps it was Johnny's idea, but the 10 judges all expressed their own opinions, making this segment much more substantial. As usual, the staff divided the fiery snake waist and presented it to the judges. Nancy picked up the chopsticks and picked up a piece of the kidney. The kidney, which had been cut horizontally and vertically, was twisted into a beautiful arc after being stir-fried. It was more like a blooming flower, quite beautiful. She had eaten the Medusa's snake liver, which was cooked by the cook at home using the pan-fried method. It was delicious beyond words. But this was the first time she had tasted a snake kidney, and it was stir-fried. The fragrance of the Medusa was not unfamiliar. It added a little spiciness, but it highlighted the original taste of the snake kidney. She had heard more than once from excellent chefs that the more precious the ingredients were, the more the cooking had to be done around the ingredients themselves. This was what an excellent chef should do. After looking at it for a while, Nancy put the snake kidney into her mouth. Fresh. Tender. Fat. Her teeth easily cut open the fat and tender kidney. The snake kidney, which had been slaughtered for less than 30 minutes, had an amazing freshness. The fresh and sweet juice splashed out, mixing and colliding with the sauce hidden between the knives, playing a beautiful symphony. The taste buds exploded silently, as if there was a beautiful music playing in the ears, making people intoxicated and unable to extricate themselves. Different from the pan-fried method, this fiery snake kidney was more intense, like the flame rising in the pot, and seemed to have penetrated the kidney, making it difficult to resist. Rip! That was the sound of clothes bursting. Nancy's eyebrows trembled slightly, but she did not panic. In order to prevent the last accident from happening again, she had already changed into a double-layer tear-proof suit, so there would be no problem of exposure. She just did not expect that this fiery snake waste would bring her such a strong feeling. It was delicious and indescribable. It's a pity that Norma only has one Medusa. Otherwise, we can have another one when we get back. Nancy's lips curled up slightly, as if she had already imagined Norma's furious look in front of the screen. Hades once again conquered my taste buds with his strength. After roasting and boiling, he showed a unique understanding of the cooking method of stir-frying. The deliciousness of this Medusa's snake waste has been perfectly interpreted. At least, I haven't tasted anything better so far. Nancy put down her chopsticks and looked at Meg with undisguised admiration. After speaking, she looked at the director and smiled. Please give me a bowl of rice. Obviously, this is a side dish. Arrange it. Johnny quickly said. Miss Nancy had always been cold and aloof on the show. Her interactions with the contestants were only a few sentences. On the other side, David also picked up a piece of snake kidney and put it into his mouth. The camera slowly zoomed in, focusing on his expression. From surprise to intoxication, that subtle change in expression was accurately captured. Rip. Then, 2 buttons on his shirt burst open, revealing his round beer belly. Amazing. This fiery snake kidney is amazing. David didn't care about his clothes at all. He exclaimed, the tenderness of the snake waste has been perfectly preserved in the stir-frying. This is incredible. The snake waste's rich aroma has been perfectly interpreted under the stimulation of the spicy and salty taste. The creative knife has given the snake waste a sense of beauty, and at the same time, allowed the taste of the seasoning to penetrate evenly into the snake waste. With one bite, the juices and sauce mix and splatter everywhere, making your soul ascend to heaven. I would like to call it the best dish of this year. David looked at Meg with a fanatical gaze. He hadn't felt this strong feeling for many years, the awe and shock of food. But at this moment, he suddenly felt the same as when he first entered the industry. Back then, he hadn't seen much of the world. If he walked into a roadside restaurant, perhaps he would be moved by their signature dishes. The judges couldn't help but look at David. This fence-sitter's speech today was quite sincere. Contestant Hades's control and understanding of the fire is indeed at the level of a genius. Even though I've been a chef for hundreds of years, I'm still willing to call him an expert. Old Hunter put down his chopsticks, his face full of emotion. This kind of control must have been achieved through thousands of practice sessions. A young man like him has a bright future. It could be said that this fiery waste had completely conquered every judge present. Even some of the chefs among them had begun to think that they were not as good as Hades. In 3 consecutive matches, there were 3 completely different types of dishes. The depth of Hades's culinary skills and cooking skills shocked the judges. They didn't know where the program team had found such a monster. Letting him compete on the same stage as the young chefs was really a bit of a bully. Shocking. At the scene of the Chef King competition, a group of judges is licking a contestant's boots. Damn it, I'm hungry again. But I just ate. I would like to call Hades the best contestant in history. 1 dish in 15 minutes, stunning the whole audience. He is indeed Brother Justice. The audience was also boiling, and the bullet screen was crazily flooded. That's the guy who took my snake and made it into a dish. Damn it. Damn it. In a detached villa in McCarthy Manor, in a pink bedroom, a girl in a JK uniform was squatting on the bed, gritting her teeth as she watched the live broadcast. Nancy is going to bring you back, humph. I'll definitely make you regret coming here. On the stage, Angelina glanced in the direction of Meg. Although Meg had received high praise from all the judges, she didn't look anxious at all. Instead, she looked a little happy. She carved many exquisite little things in her hands, and gradually placed a picture of 100 beasts on a large plate. Although Meg's experience had attracted a lot of attention, Angelina's magical carving skills had also attracted a lot of attention from the audience. After the praises from the judges, the scoring segment began. As the 10-second countdown ended, Meg's score appeared on the big screen. Hades' score, judges' score, 90 online score, 10 total score, 100. Chapter 2473. Meg looked at the score on the big screen and was stunned for a moment. This was a bit exaggerated, wasn't it? He knew the online score in advance. These days, his popularity had allowed him to surpass Angelina and take first place in the competition. However, the judge's full score was a bit beyond his expectations. This also meant that he had become the champion of this year's Chef King competition in advance. Even if Angelina also got full marks from the judges, his score would never be full again. Hades, YYDS. The first person in the history of the Chef King competition to get full marks. I feel like I've witnessed history. Where did the program team find this monster? Why didn't I hear anything about him before? As the final score was confirmed, the whole internet was in an uproar. The bullet screen was flooded with comments, and the hashtag Hades final full score quickly climbed to the top of the hot search list. This topic made the live broadcast room's popularity soar again. Johnny thought that it would be difficult to maintain the popularity of the whole competition, but judging from the current straight-up popularity of the live broadcast room, it was very likely to set a record for the peak popularity of the live broadcast room. The judges all congratulated Mag for getting full marks, and gave him another round of flattery. Everyone present was a veteran. Although Hades could only be regarded as a junior at his age, from Nancy's special attention to him and the strength he showed, he would definitely join McCarthy Manor after the competition. It was not an exaggeration to say that this was like a carp leaping over the dragon's gate. Meg responded politely and said to the audience, "It doesn't matter if you don't have snake kidneys at home, you can use pig kidneys as a substitute. Spicy pig kidneys are also a rare delicacy. In fact, I've always been making spicy pig kidneys before." From the expensive and extremely precious Medusa snake kidneys to the commonly seen pig kidneys in the market, this replacement was a little surprising, but it also helped Meg gain a wave of popularity from passers-by. He didn't pretend to be high-end, just like his dishes were full of smoke and smoke. Hades clinched the championship with full marks, making the intense final lose its suspense. However, there was not much dejection on Angelina's face. She was still sculpting the work in her hands seriously. In this year's Chef King competition, Angelina had been a strong contender for the championship from the beginning to the end. Anyone who encountered Hades, who had appeared out of nowhere, could only return empty-handed. The old audience looked at her with some pity. It seems that Angelina is planning to sculpt 100 beasts. Her creativity is amazing and she's so fast. She's already halfway done. David shifted the topic to Angelina. Angelina's carving skills and creativity are the best among the contestants this year. I didn't expect her to use pure carving to present her final work. Old Hunter stroked his chin and smiled. Maybe she'll slap me in the face. As the topic changed, Meg, as a finalist, also received a seat. He looked at Angelina with some doubts in his heart. This girl's strength was not bad. If he hadn't interfered, she would have been this year's Chef King. However, this was a cooking competition after all. If she completely gave up on cooking and focused on sculpting, what kind of operation would that be? Admit defeat in advance. Under the puzzled gaze of the crowd, Angelina completed her 100 beasts carving with great efficiency after half an hour. It was somewhat exaggerated to call it 100 beasts carving, but more than 10 beautifully carved major monsters were distributed in a carefully created large sand table. The flowers, birds, and beasts were beautiful, like an exquisite piece of art. Angelina used her uncanny carving skills to transform the originally completely unmatched ingredients into a different kind of cute appearance. Oh my god! That fox is so cute. It's actually carved with a white jade radish. So, are all chefs artists? You can't be a chef without some skills. The audience was full of praise for Angelina's performance. The judges' expressions were a little complicated. Angelina's performance today was really amazing, but this was the King of Cooks competition, after all, and it was a competition of culinary skills. If this was all she had done today, it would be a little disappointing. Angelina put down the carving knife in her hand and glanced in Meg's direction. Suddenly, her expression became dignified and determined. What's she doing? Meg caught the change in her mood. Just as he was thinking about what she was going to do, he saw her pick up a box of flour and pour it on the completed 100 beasts carving. White powder flew everywhere. There was an uproar at the scene. Johnny jumped up directly from the director's seat. It can't be, right? Meg frowned. Could it be that she broke down on the spot because she couldn't accept the outcome of failure? But she didn't look like such a person. The audience in front of the screen was also shocked by this scene. They widened their eyes and looked at the white powder that gradually dissipated. The image gradually became clear, and the sand table in front of Angelina reappeared in front of everyone's eyes. The original 100 beasts carving disappeared and was replaced by a human face, the face of a young man. The contestants who had been surfing at the forefront for the past 2 days were definitely no stranger to this face. It was Fergus Dixon, the son of the Dixon family and the confessed murderer in the Horus incident. Just before the live broadcast in the morning, Hades had already pushed him to the top of the hot search list. At this moment, Angelina's 100 beasts carving turned into Fergus' face after she poured a bucket of flour on it. There were 2 words below his portrait, murderer. The noise at the scene had quieted down. Everyone looked at the portrait and fell into a strange silence. How dare she? Meg furrowed his brows tightly. He didn't expect Angelina to do something like this in the finals. The Dixon family wasn't to be trifled with. He dared to do this because he had Ferdinand's backing, and more importantly, he could abandon this identity at any time. He didn't need to worry about revenge at all. Angelina was different. She was just a little girl with no background. She was simply digging her own grave by putting the tycoon on the fire in such a high-profile manner. My scalp is numb. She's too reckless. Is this the legendary dream linkage? One detonated before the competition, and the other directly nailed to death during the competition. I love it. Who wouldn't love such a brave girl? The more than 2 billion viewers who were watching the live broadcast were deeply shocked at this moment. The bullet screen was flooded with comments. Director Johnny's expression was almost twisted together. What the fuck was this? Couldn't they just focus on the show? Chapter 2474. Angelina had used her work to identify Fergus as the murderer in the King of Cooks finals, which was like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples. Hades had only used the popularity of the King of Cooks to repost a related tweet before the competition with a hard-like quote. However, Angelina had made such a move in front of more than 2 billion live viewers during the actual competition. From the 100 beasts painting to Fergus' portrait, this was like a magic operation that had been premeditated for a long time. The atmosphere in the live broadcast was solemn. The staff looked at Johnny one after another. This was already a live broadcast incident, and it involved another major tycoon. Should they continue the live broadcast, or rather, how should they continue? Johnny turned his gaze to Nancy, who was at the judges' table. He couldn't make the decision on this matter, so it was up to Nancy to decide. Although the McCarthy family and the Dixon family had always been at odds, due to the status of the two families, it hadn't reached the point of falling out. Hades's previous actions could still be blamed on the contestants, and it had nothing to do with the program team. However, Angelina's actions in the King of Cooks finals were tantamount to putting the program team directly on the fire, and there was no way to get rid of the blame. Are the McCarthy family and the Dixon family planning to go to war? Why are they doing this in the show? Lucian sat in the office of the Micropush building, looking at the live broadcast interface with a dumbfounded expression. The tycoons weren't harmonious. After tens of thousands of years of development, there were far more grudges than friendships. However, as the tycoons gradually hid their edges, this kind of open dispute was no longer common. Whether it was the contestants' personal behavior or the McCarthy family's behind-the-scenes instructions would depend on Nancy's performance. Damn it! How dare this bitch! On a private island on the edge of the Mara archipelago, a magnificent castle towered over it. On the platform on the second floor, Fergus, who had been arranged to temporarily hide from the limelight, threw the crystal wine glass in his hand to the ground. He gritted his teeth and looked at Angelina on the screen. Now, any Tom, Dick, and Harry dared to provoke the tycoons. However, the popularity that had gradually been suppressed soared after the repeated actions of these two guys today, and it was completely out of control. Third young master, the patriarch has ordered you not to interfere in this matter anymore. The family will handle it. The robot was cleaning up the debris on the ground. A middle-aged man came upstairs and said calmly, "Colin, if we can't suppress this, what will happen?" Fergus asked the man. "Don't worry, third young master. There's nothing that the Dixon family can't suppress," the man said with an indifferent expression. In addition to the onlookers who didn't mind the drama, the various forces related to their interests were also concerned about the sudden change in the direction of public opinion. In the long river of history, such things had happened before. But no matter how ferocious the public opinion was, the corporations didn't fall. A bunch of commoners couldn't be considered a big deal. This time, it was a little different. The military's extra attention made this matter more uncertain. What was the role of the McCarthy family behind all of this? Almost everyone was waiting for Nancy's position. Would she suspend the show or support the contestants? This would be seen as the McCarthy family's attitude. At this moment, Nancy was also caught off guard by Angelina's sudden actions. If Hades's actions in the morning were still within her understanding, then Angelina's clear-cut performance really made her a little confused. Although Angelina performed well in this season's competition, she didn't intend to recruit her to McCarthy Manor. Without the McCarthy family's protection, offending and provoking the Dixon family like this was tantamount to throwing an egg at a rock. They would inevitably suffer retaliation. Nancy looked at the girl standing on the stage with a determined expression, and the man with clear eyes next to her. She suddenly felt a little funny. There might be many people with a strong sense of justice in this world, but the two bravest seemed to be standing on the final stage of the competition today. Then, as the organizer, should she still hide? Shouldn't the pervert who killed an innocent girl bear the responsibility for his actions? Clap, clap, clap. Nancy clapped and stood up. She looked at Nancy with appreciation and said, "Although this appearance is unbearable, if I have to give a score for this wonderful performance, I'll give it the second full score today. I think this is an unexpected performance. It's also a scalp-numbing and deeply shocking performance." The scene was quiet for a while. At first, there was sparse applause, and then it gradually became the applause of the audience. Angelina bit her lower lip tightly, holding back her tears from rolling down her reddened eyes. From the moment the flower was splashed, she was ready to be driven off the stage, but she didn't expect to be rewarded with applause from the audience. Meg was very surprised. He knew that Nancy would probably not expel Angelina during the show. This was tantamount to admitting defeat to the Dixon family, and it would also completely destroy the competition, the most popular variety show on the internet. However, he did not expect Nancy to take a clear stand and praise Angelina. Then, she went back to work. "Perhaps you can tell us why you created this piece of art?" Nancy asked as she looked at Angelina. This was also a question that lingered in everyone's mind. Angelina didn't just repost a tweet. From the painting of 100 beasts to the portrait of Fergus, the transformation of a bucket of flour must be the result of careful design and practice, and this may have happened much earlier than the start of this year's show. Everyone wanted to know why she did this, including Meg. Angelina looked at Nancy and felt encouraged by her gaze. She said in a low voice, "The girl who was killed by Fergus was my sister. She was 3 years older than me and my only family. He killed her, and he also killed my world." The scene fell into silence again. Nancy subconsciously clenched her fists and looked at Angelina, who was trembling slightly, full of pity. The judges and the on-site staff were also shocked. "I see." Meg came to a realization. Angelina was that girl's younger sister, so it was understandable why she liked him so much all of a sudden. It wasn't love, it was more of gratitude. The crowd was watching the show, the tycoons were calculating and trading. In this world, she was probably the only one who really cared about the girl who was killed by Fergus and buried under the tree. She was also the only one who really wanted the murderer to pay with his life. Even if it was like throwing an egg against a rock, she would still do it without hesitation. Her name is Selena, a girl with dimples when she smiles. The day before her 18th birthday, she was invited to join Horace's crew in the name of acting a role. No one has seen her since. 2 days ago, Horace admitted that Fergus killed her and buried her under the tree. "I want him to bear the consequences for what he did." Angelina's voice was a little low, but it was exceptionally firm. Chapter 2475. Angelina's confession was like a sudden clap of thunder. If it was said that the onlookers before were angry, they didn't have much empathy for the victim and couldn't resonate too strongly with him. However, Angelina's words made everyone deeply aware that the girl who was raped and killed by Fergus was a lively person. She was someone else's sister, a girl who loved to smile and had dimples, just like the cute girl next door. The people's anger was pushed to the peak. The powerlessness and anger of the destruction of a beautiful thing and the feeling of insignificance in the face of the tycoons were infuriating. "Damn it, Fergus. He should be sentenced to death." The whole internet requests the judge to sentence Fergus. The so-called justice is just a joke under the control of the tycoons. She must have been so sad in the past 3 years, but she never showed it in her works. She didn't bring this emotion to her fans. What a gentle person. The audience expressed their anger and pity for Angelina. She was the one who posted that tweet. Meg thought about the tweet he had forwarded in the morning. There were many coincidences in the world, but he didn't expect them to come together today. Looking at the resolute Angelina, it was obvious that she was fully aware of the consequences of exposing Fergus. She was determined to die together with him. "It seems that after today's competition, there's something I have to do in advance." Meg lowered his eyes, but he had already made up his mind. The show continued. Nancy's concern made the audience feel the warmth of the show, but after all, this was the finals of the King of Chefs competition. So, after dissecting the matter, she brought the show back on track and began to give the judges their scores. Perhaps it was a tacit understanding, or perhaps it was a silent protest, but Angelina received full marks from the judges. Angelina's score, judges score, 90. Online PK score, 9.8. Total score, 99.8. An equally shocking score appeared on the big screen. Angelina received a very high score with an amazing performance, almost close to full marks. The host smiled and said, "But it's a bit of a pity." With a slight disadvantage of 0.2 points, he ranked second behind Hades, who scored full marks. Let's congratulate contestant Hades. He is the first contestant in the history of the Chef King tournament with a perfect score. He is the champion of this year's Chef King tournament and is honored with the title of Chef King. The crowd burst into thunderous applause and petals flew in the air. Meg stood up with a smile. Under the guidance of the host, he came to the center of the stage and began to give his acceptance speech. #The Chef King Finals accuses Fergus of murder. #Angelina is the sister of the victim of Fergus murder. Has #Fergus been arrested? #Fergus go to jail. More than 10 hot searches appeared on Weibo's hot search list, causing a huge uproar among the public. It was even more popular than the Horus incident. The public opinion was fierce, and the angry crowd wanted nothing more than to drill through the net and kill Fergus on the spot. "Boss, the Dixon family's request." Amos connected to Lucian and said with some difficulty, "Tell them that there's nothing we can do about it." Lucian directly interrupted Amos's words and warned, "No matter who greets you, ignore them. This matter is no longer something we can participate in." "Okay, I'll reply to them right away," Amos replied. After hanging up, Lucian looked at the Weibo's back-end data and frowned. The number of edits related to Fergus had exceeded 100 million in 10 minutes, and the number of searches and views had exceeded 2 billion. After being the CEO of Weibo for so many years, this was the first time he had seen such a situation. He thought that the Horus incident would end after the Horus incident, but he didn't expect it to become a series of climax after climax. The trial of Horus, Hades, Fergus, and Angelina's accusation of Fergus in the finals. She even revealed the identity of the victim's sister. It was completely an inspirational script for a civilian girl's revenge. This time, the Dixon family had to pay the price for their arrogance. Even with their background, they had to lower their proud heads in the face of such turbulent public opinion. This girl is too pitiful. Fergus, that bastard, really deserves to die. On the top floor of the Twin Towers, a collie was sitting on the sofa, wiping her tears as she angrily said this. "Young miss, the third master wants to talk to you." The secretary quickly came in. "Just say that I'm sleeping and won't answer." A collie coldly said. "Yes." The secretary replied before quickly leaving. "At this time, you still want me to clear your precious son's name? He'd go to jail." A collie curled her lips. She opened her wristband and dialed a number. "I want to protect someone. The commission is 30 million. Family head, the influence of this matter is too big. There is also the McCarthy family's interference and the Weibo side isn't willing to cooperate, so we can't suppress it anymore. Moreover, the anger has shifted from young Master Fergus to the Dixon family. There are already many proposals to boycott the Fergus family's products on the internet and they have received widespread support. We have to make a decision as soon as possible and minimize the influence of this matter on the Dixon family." A man who looked like a lawyer stood in front of Merlin and said this. Merlin's expression was serious and the anger on his face was hard to hide. He said in a deep voice, "Send this person to the investigation department and report it on the internet. Have this matter end as soon as possible." Understood. The lawyer quickly turned to leave. Tell him not to appear in Tucker City for 10 years. If he causes trouble again, I definitely won't let him off. Merlin ordered the housekeeper beside him. Very soon, the news of the Dixon family escorting Fergus to the investigation department appeared on the hot search list with a video attached. #Fergus surrenders. It directly reached the top of the hot search list. Following this, the Tucker City Investigation Department also released a tweet, confirming that Fergus had turned himself in. The investigation had already begun and the results would be announced as soon as possible. On the other side, after the Chef King competition award ceremony ended, Nancy gave Meg the Chef King medal and announced that Hades would be the McCarthy Manor's chef. This was the first time news of a special hire had been announced on the show. It was meant as a reward, but it was also meant to protect Hades. After all, he had completely offended the Dixon family. Nancy's statement on behalf of the McCarthy family would at least make the Dixon family hesitate and not dare make a move against him. This is all over the internet, please take Angelina in as well, Nancy. Please protect her. Although Fergus has already gone in, I'm starting to worry about Angelina's safety. Chapter 2476. Angelina already knew that Fergus had surrendered himself to the police. She smiled and looked at Hades, who was standing on the stage. The golden light shone on him, making him look so dazzling. This year's Chef's Championship will come to an end. Contestant Hades came out of nowhere and won the championship. His comeback was amazing and will definitely leave a deep mark in the history of the Chef's Championship. Contestant Angelina's performance was also memorable. Her score of 99.8 points will forever be remembered in the history of the Chef's Championship. Thank you to every contestant for your wonderful contribution. The show came to an end with the host's polite remarks. The live broadcast was over. Fergus got up and bowed to the judges and staff on the scene to express his gratitude. This year's Chef King tournament started low and went high. Starting from the quarterfinals, it had reached a climax one after another. No matter if it was the attention or the topic, it was far ahead of the previous years. It had reached a height that even he could not replicate. Then, he sacrificed a direct descendant of a conglomerate and made more than a dozen A-listers in the entertainment industry blow themselves up. This kind of thing, he didn't dare to think about it. Congratulations. Angelina walked up to Meg. Although her eyes were red, her smile was clean and bright. Thank you. Meg smiled and nodded. He felt a little sorry for her. Fergus' arrest should be a comfort to her, but Nancy didn't take her in. How was she going to deal with the Dixon family's revenge? I should thank you for everything you've done, but I'm sorry that you've been put in danger. Angelina looked apologetic. I just followed my heart and did something that I should do. You don't have to thank me. Meg shook his head slightly and looked at her deeply. Then, he said goodbye and left. He didn't want others to think that they were working together premeditated, which was inconsistent with the truth. Mr. Hades, Angelina called out to Meg. She quickly stepped forward and stuffed something into his hand. It's nice to meet you. Maybe we won't meet again, but I'll always remember you, Angelina said seriously. Then, she turned and walked away quickly with a red face. Meg watched her disappear at the door and walked out of the recording hole. He opened his hand and looked at the blue water droplet pendant lying quietly in his hand. It was a very ordinary crystal pendant, but it was clear and clean, just like her. Who's going to protect her now? Meg asked she, who was following behind him. I'll protect her for a while, Shiching said coldly. Meg nodded slightly, put away the pendant, and said, that guy who turned himself in, was a fake, right? She's eyes were filled with surprise. Don't be surprised. Scapegoats aren't a specialty of your dungeon. There was a hint of mockery in Mag's smile. However, your underground city's bureaucrats are really rotten to the core. You still dare to accept the fake as real at this time. An important direct descendant of a plutocrat family will raise a shadow from a young age. Whether it's appearance, habits, or temperament, it's very similar to the original owner. Other than those close to them, it's hard to tell them apart, she explained. I want his current position. What do you want to do? You know very well. Their eyes met, and the two of them were silent for a long time. In the end, she looked away first. Meg's bracelet lit up and a location popped up. The Mara Islands, 30,000 kilometers away. Lend me your battleship. A flying car painted by the military stopped in front of the Mocha building. Two young officers alighted and were led into the building by the Mocha Group's executives. Soon after, the two officers came out of the building, accompanied by Angelina. Immediately after, the Dungeon Military Secretariat issued a tweet: the military's first special chef, Angelina, officially joins the army today. Dixon Group, this. Meg had just come out of Nancy's office and was stunned when he saw the tweet. He did not expect the military to do this, at least in the atmosphere. Not only did they let Angelina join the army directly, but they also directly mentioned the Dixon family. What did this mean? This was a blatant warning. If anything happened to Angelina, it would be the Dixon family's doing. If there was anyone in the dungeon that no one dared to touch, the military was definitely one of them. Nancy had already confirmed with him that he would join McCarthy Manor and would take him there tomorrow to officially join. He had half a day of free time today. The mission of sneaking into McCarthy Manor was more than half completed. Back in the dormitory, Meg locked the doors and windows, avoided the various detection equipment in the building, and left the Mocha facility. I didn't expect this to be what you meant by protection. Sitting in the battleship, Meg looked at She with appreciation. You should know very well that this is not something I can decide, she said expressionlessly and drove the battleship away from Tucker City. Meg smiled and did not say anything. He naturally knew that to do this to this extent, it must be that person who gave the nod. He naturally would not miss the opportunity to beat the tycoons. That private island is an important stronghold of the Dixon family and has an all-weather defense system. According to our intelligence, in order to protect Fergus, there should be a half-step transcendent powerhouse on the island. Are you sure you want to go on the island? She pulled up a map of the island's defenses. If I let that kid get away with it, I'll definitely feel uncomfortable, Meg said with a smile. She nodded slightly and pulled up a list of information. Barkle, a half-step transcendent powerhouse, good at using a saber and extremely strong. She began to explain the information to Meg. I'll cooperate with you in this operation. From the moment you land on the island, you must leave the island within 5 minutes to avoid the arrival of the other party's transcendent powerhouse. She turned off the bracelet and looked at Meg with a serious expression. You should know the difference between the transcendent and half-step transcendent better than I do. 5 minutes is enough. Meg nodded. I know you've always been fast. She also nodded slightly. Meg frowned and felt that there was something wrong with these words. Half an hour later, the vast sea appeared in sight. On the sea, there were hundreds of scattered islands. They had arrived at the Mara Islands. I'll help you kill Barkle first. I won't interfere with the rest, she said to Meg, who was about to jump off the ship, as the battleship hovered invisibly. No problem. Meg, who had changed into black clothes, agreed and jumped off the battleship. A black longsword appeared under his feet and he flew into the air, flying toward the small island 10 miles away. At the same time, he turned on the camera and started a live broadcast. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, He turned on a delayed live broadcast and set the time to 5 minutes. Trial Fergus. Fergus turned himself in. Just a shadow won't do. End of chapter. Chapter 2477. Meg streaked across the sky like a startled leaf, heading straight for the small island at the edge of the Mara archipelago. After avoiding the area where the heavy firepower was concentrated, Mag slashed open the emergency defensive barrier on the island with his sword and landed on the island. Although it was called a small island, it was actually not small. The Mara archipelago had a total of 32 islands, and this island was ranked 5th in size. In an instant, the island's alarms went off. Who dares trespass on the island? A majestic voice exploded like thunder as a 2-meter-tall man with a full beard jumped down from a high place with a thick black saber in his hand. His pair of bell-sized eyes stared at Meg and narrowed. Judge. That's right, Meg grinned and said in a low voice. Clown, you actually dared to deliver yourself to my doorstep. Watch me peel off your skin today and let everyone see your cowardice. Barker shouted angrily as flames suddenly rose from his saber. The hard rock beneath his feet instantly shattered as his sturdy body shot out and slashed at Meg with his saber. Half-step transcendent, the same realm as Meg. Since becoming a demigod, Meg had not fought with a master of the same level. Such an opponent could only be found in the underground city. This was a rare opportunity, so he had to make good use of it. This guy actually killed his way to my doorstep. In the villa's safe house, Fergus looked at Meg in a black suit on the screen, his voice filled with anger and fear. The family had already given up on him, so they sent the Shadow to the investigation bureau. His many years of work had been destroyed by this guy in front of him. He wanted nothing more than to skin him alive. But what scared him the most was, how did this guy find this place? Did he know that he was hiding here? If this matter was exposed, who knew what kind of chaos it would cause? Third young master, rest assured. Master Barker is a half-step transcendent. That guy is just a clown. Just kill him and throw him into the sea, the butler said calmly as he brought over a glass of wine. Fergus calmed down a little when he heard this. That's right, what was he afraid of? The family had asked Master Barker to protect him to prevent such a thing from happening. No matter how strong that guy was, could he still be a god? Mag looked at Barkle, who was charging at him like a heavy truck. A terrifying pressure emanated from his body. That was a kind of aura, a powerful aura brought about by absolute power. If the person standing here was a 10th tier being, they probably wouldn't even be able to move. According to the intelligence analysis given by She, Barkle was a fire element close combat powerhouse. He was famous for his terrifying outburst and absolute strength. Among his peers, he was one of the best in close combat. What a coincidence. What I'm best at is also close combat. Under the mask, Meg's lips curled up slightly. Barkle's terrifying figure appeared in front of Meg in an instant. His black heavy saber dragged a dozen meters of flame as it slashed down at Meg. The moment the long blade fell, Meg's feet moved slightly and disappeared from the spot. At the same time, the long sword in his hand pierced out 5 times in 1 second, twisting and tearing the void apart. Boom! The long saber struck the ground, creating a trench that was tens of meters long and several meters wide. The rocks were melted by the flames and turned into magma. Even the entire island shook. The blow of a half-step transcendent realm master was terrifying. Unfortunately, Meg's speed was too fast. Besides 2 small holes in the corners of his clothes, he did not suffer any substantial damage. On the other side, Barkle fell to the ground with 5 bloody holes in his chest, abdomen, and thigh. Half-step transcendent. Barkle looked at Meg, his expression becoming dignified for the first time. The wounds on his body were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Did your talent increase healing? Why didn't you increase it all to defense? Meg cursed silently. A transcendent realm opponent really had thick skin and flesh. If it had been a level 10 master, these few sword strikes would have been enough to pierce through them and send them flying. This guy is also a half-step transcendent. Fergus was shocked, his hand trembling as he held the wine glass, spilling wine all over his trousers. The steward was also a little surprised, but he still calmly said, "Third young master doesn't need to worry, I've already reported this to the family. Soon, a transcendent realm master will come to support us. Before that, we only need to stay here. I don't have time to play with you, your young master is still waiting for me." Meg held his sword horizontally in front of him and declared arrogantly. "That depends on whether you can step over me." Barkle's eyes flashed with anger. No one in the same realm dared to look down on him like this. Meg didn't waste any more words with him and with a thought, disappeared from where he stood. Suddenly, sword chi and murderous intent filled the air. Barkle's expression became dignified. The shield pendant on his waist lit up and a black armor instantly appeared on his body. The long saber in his hand drew a circle on the ground and a wall of flames appeared, surrounding him as he vigilantly scanned his surroundings. Suddenly, a light flashed across his eyes and the long saber in his hand slashed out behind him, causing space to distort and flames to erupt. The wall of flames parted and a dark shadow stabbed out with a sword. However, when the saber slashed out and cut the dark shadow in half, it hit nothing but air. This dark shadow was actually an afterimage. Damn it! Barkle was shocked. A sharp sword cry rang in his ears and he quickly pulled back his saber while activating all the defensive artifacts he had on him. In a duel between peak masters, victory or defeat was often decided by a hair's breadth, and this was even more true in a pure melee. The sharp sword light pierced through the layers of protective shields, like popping a Matryoshka doll's balloon, then pierced through the seemingly indestructible armor and into the softest part of his neck. In the face of death, Barkle finally displayed the strength of a half-step transcendent realm master. His armor burst and his whole body transformed into lava, his defense rising sharply as he forcibly blocked the tip of the sword that had pierced into his body. At the same time, young Kai slashed out with his saber full of determination. With Barkle's body as the center, the temperature within 100 meters of him suddenly rose and flames even appeared in the air. The flame domain had been activated. Now that's interesting. Mag let go of the long sword that was stuck in his hand, and retreated rapidly. Within the flame domain, his figure became visibly slower. What no one saw was that his hand, which was hidden under his wide sleeve, had taken out a kitchen knife and slashed at the void behind him. The space distorted and a crack appeared in the flame domain. Meg's figure flickered and he slipped out of the flame domain like a fish. A silver sword appeared in his hand again and he slashed out with it. Cyan sword chi shot out like a rainbow and collided with Barkle's saber in the air. The cyan and red blades collided, evenly matched. "Sword, come." Mag spat out 2 words softly. At the same time, double pupils appeared in Meg's eyes. Barkle was stunned for a moment. A black heavy sword pierced through the air and in a flash, crossed a distance of several hundred meters and pierced through Barkle's back and out of his chest. End of chapter. Chapter 2478. You. Barkle looked at the huge hole in his chest. His eyes were filled with unwillingness and disbelief as he slowly knelt on the ground. Dozens of miles away, Shi's finger moved away from the trigger. She could not hide the shock on her usually calm face. She was so used to seeing him busy in the kitchen that she almost forgot that this was an existence who dared to challenge the great old one single-handedly. In a battle of the same level, Meg killed his opponent in 2 minutes. The strength that Meg showed completely exceeded her expectations. Barkle is dead. The wine glass in Fergus' hand fell to the ground and shattered. His face was pale and terrified. Barkle was a half-step transcendent powerhouse that the family worshipped, but he was easily killed in a few rounds. What kind of strength was that guy? Transcendent. My life is over. Fergus' body could not stop trembling. He regretted it. If he had known, he would have turned himself in. At least he would not have to face this god of death. The butler's face was also pale. Barkle's death had completely broken his psychological defense, but he still comforted, "Third young master, please rest assured. The safe house's defense system has been fully activated. We only need to hold on for 5 more minutes. Family reinforcements will arrive soon." He may not be able to find the safe house. Before the butler could finish his words, the man in black had already appeared in the camera outside the safe house and made a Y sign at the camera. "He's here. He's here." Fergus jumped up in fright and shrank into a corner. His eyes were filled with fear. "Don't worry, young master. This door was personally reinforced by a transcendent powerhouse. Even if he's a transcendent powerhouse, he won't be able to break the door in 5 minutes." Bang! 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 A series of explosions rang out. The heavy door shook violently and was on the verge of collapsing. The high-precision machinery was directly broken and lost its effectiveness. Bang! The 10,000-kilogram door was kicked open. The butler, whose eyes were wide open, was directly pressed under the door and turned into a pile of meat paste. The military's door-breaking bombs were specially developed to deal with corporations, right? Meg walked into the safe house with his sword and looked at the door that was destroyed by the bomb. If he had to break the door himself, he might not be able to open it in 3 to 5 minutes. "Don't kill me. Don't kill me. I'll give you anything you want, everything. Don't kill me, please." Fergus was so scared that he pissed his pants. He knelt on the ground and didn't even notice that his legs were bleeding from the glass. Fergus Dixon, identity confirmed. Meg looked down at Ferguson and said sarcastically, "Shouldn't you be squatting in the investigation bureau of Tucker City? Why are you here?" "That's my shadow. That's my shadow. Please send me to jail. I'll accept the judgment of the law. I want to pay the price for what I've done. Please, I want to go to jail. I want to go to jail," Fergus cried and begged. He just wanted to get away from this killing god. Even if he had to stay in prison for the rest of his life, it would still be better than being killed here. He didn't even dare to think about Horace's miserable state. Jail? If jail is useful, what's the point of having judges? Meg sneered. If you come out after a few years in prison, how can the souls of those innocent souls who died in your hands and those girls who were defiled by you live in peace? Fergus' face was as pale as paper. He wanted to continue begging and stall for time. "Fergus Dixon, you are now on trial. 3 years ago, you raped and killed Selena. There are witnesses and material evidence. You are sentenced to death and will be executed today," Meg announced loudly as he walked towards Fergus with his sword in hand. "Don't kill me. Don't kill me. I'm a direct descendant of the Dixon family. If you kill me, the Dixon family won't let you off." Fergus retreated as he cried out in fear. "Wait until I become a transcendent. I'll use your Dixon family's transcendent to practice my skills," Meg thought as he pointed his sword at Fergus' eyes. It was this pair of eyes that took a liking to that girl first. Then it's time to destroy them. With a light tap of the sword, the sound of an eyeball exploding could be heard, accompanied by Fergus' screams and curses. If you can't control your hands, then don't bother. The sword swung down and chopped off a pair of hands. This last strike is to remind all the descendants of the corporations that the law may not be able to punish you, but I can. Unless you hide by your transcendent ancestors' side, I will appear anywhere. Meg's sword pierced Fergus' chest and gouged out a heart that was still beating. He threw it aside in disdain. It's time to go. The other party's transcendent will be here in 3 minutes. She's voice came from the earpiece. Okay. Meg sheathed his sword and turned around. He flew away from the island under the terrified gazes of the maids. Meg returned to the battleship. The battleship immediately started and flew towards the depths of the sea. Meg sat in the co-pilot's seat and clicked on the micro-push button. He edited the previous video and uploaded it to the micro-push button. He then used the recorded video to start a live stream. Trial Fergus' live stream quickly rose to the top of the micro-push button. #Trial Fergus. The topic also rose rapidly. Fuck. The judge is live streaming again. What's going on? Didn't Fergus turn himself in? Killing the half-step transcendent Barkle alone. The judge is so strong. The one who was sent to prison was the shadow. The corporations are so shameless. This is so satisfying. This kind of lawless scum should be punished like this. Sons of the corporations, tremble in fear. The investigation bureau is so useless. They didn't even know they took in a fake. Useless. The live stream and video quickly spread. Although they were quickly banned, it did not affect the spread and popularity of this incident. She looked at Meg in silence. Ask whatever you want. Don't hold it in. Meg took off his mask and said with a smile as he took a bottle of iced happy drink for himself. I hope this is the last time something like this happens. You've created a lot of chaos in the underground city and are constantly challenging the bottom line of the underground city's laws. It's very likely that you'll bring about large-scale copycat crimes, she said with a serious expression. If you were the one standing in front of Fergus with a sword, would you kill him? Meg looked at she and asked. If an ordinary person commits a crime, the ordinary person will be gone. If a corporation commits a crime, the law will be gone. Meg took a sip of Coke and smiled mockingly. Is this the bottom line? She fell silent again. All right, I won't commit any more crimes in the short term. I'm just a passerby. If it wasn't for Angelina, I wouldn't be here today. I'm not a saint. I just like to follow my heart. Meg closed his eyes and turned on the massage chair. Although the battle between the half-step transcendent was short, there were still many details that were worth reviewing. It was not that Barkle was too weak, but that he had too many trump cards. Whether it was the mental influence or the flying sword, they were all strange moves that went beyond conventional combat methods. That was why he could kill him in such a short time. Chapter 2479. Angelina had just finished the enlistment procedures and was sitting outside the recruit office in the Hexagon building. When she saw the news on her bracelet, her eyes instantly turned red and she quickly walked to the bathroom. After a while, she came out with red eyes. The haze on her face seemed to have disappeared at this moment. The scum that she thought she would never be able to take down was finally dead. He had been tried and sentenced to death in the name of her sister. Angelina, the procedures have been completed for you. I've also sent you some things to pay attention to in the army. Now, I'll take you to see where you'll be working for the next period of time. The Hexagon building is the military headquarters. A middle-aged female officer walked out of the office and called out to Angelina, talking to her while walking. Angelina's expression became serious as she seriously listened. From today onwards, she was no longer the internet celebrity Angelina, but rather a soldier. My son. In front of the island villa ruins, a middle-aged man was kneeling on the ground crying. A white-bearded old man was floating in the air, looking down. His face was filled with anger and a bit of seriousness. Old ancestor, this is the video footage from the scene. There's very little useful information and it's all been destroyed. A person came forward with a holographic projector and said while playing the video, according to what the people at the scene saw, that person is very strong and his moves are very strange. He killed Barkle in just 2 to 3 minutes, I don't know if he's a transcendent. He's not a transcendent. The old man shook his head, if the other side was a transcendent, why would it take 2 minutes to kill Barkle? He's a half-step transcendent, but his strength isn't bad. Old ancestor, you have to take revenge for Fergus. He is provoking our Dixon family, slapping our faces. The middle-aged man kneeling on the ground turned around and looked up at the old man in the sky as he cried out. The old man coldly looked at him. The middle-aged man suddenly felt like he had fallen into an ice cave and his voice suddenly stopped. You raised this kind of waste and you dare ask the family to take revenge for him. The old man's expression was cold as he said in a cold voice, within a month, if you can't calm the impact of this matter on the family, you'll be expelled from the family. He's actually dead. On the top floor of the Twin Towers, a collie saw the scene of Fergus' eyes being dug out and his heart being dug out. She felt that the top-grade sour beef soup in her hand didn't taste good and she wanted to vomit. Turning off the video, she vomited a few times into the trash can that her secretary quickly brought over before a collie slowly calmed down. All of you leave. A collie waved her hand to chase away the maids and secretaries. She was the only one left in the empty room. Fergus was dead, but her mood was a bit strange. Speaking of which, she should be happy. She had cursed this guy more than once to hurry up and die. But when she really saw his eyes gouged out, his heart dug out, and then he died, she felt extreme physical and psychological discomfort. He really did deserve to die. After all the bad things he had done, even if he died 10 times, it wouldn't be enough to make up for it. This is a good thing for the people, we don't need to see that disgusting fellow at family gatherings in the future. Thinking of this, isn't it wonderful? A collie thought of this and her mood gradually became better. But, Hades Horus is dead. Fergus is also dead. Is this fellow a death god? A collie rubbed her chin. Speaking of which, she originally wanted to go to Nancy to intercept Hades, but the matter with Fergus was too big. No matter what, she was still the daughter of the Dixon family, so it wasn't suitable for her to have too much contact with Hades. Moreover, with how petty the patriarch was, he most likely wouldn't let Hades and Angelina off. Hearing that Angelina had already been taken away by the military, Merlin wouldn't touch this bad luck. Now he could only hope that Nancy would place more importance on Hades. As long as he entered the McCarthy family, he would be safe. This kind of high-quality man, giving him to Nancy, it really makes people unwilling. A collie was a bit annoyed as she tapped on Hades' page. After looking at it for a bit, she exited and gave a sigh. Meg returned to the Mocha building and didn't go out again. He locked the door and sat in front of his desk with a normal history book in his hand. It looked like he was reading a book. But he was actually digesting the information the system had collected in his mind, including the secret information the system had obtained from invading the large families. Tomorrow, he would follow Nancy and officially enter the McCarthy Manor, which would be the first step of this mission. But this mission was to find traces of Counselor Tam in the McCarthy family and confirm his condition. Whether he was dead or alive, there had to be an explanation. Did you think that you could find this kind of information as long as you entered the McCarthy family? If it was that simple, Ferdinand wouldn't have let him cross the border. If Meg had to slowly investigate by himself, not to mention a week, he might not be able to find anything in the McCarthy family that was guarded by Transcendence in a year. At this time, the cheat was very important. The technology the system grasped was indeed weaker than the dungeon, but this was the initial setting the heavens had set for it. But the system itself was definitely better than the current artificial intelligence of the dungeon. The reason was very simple. The artificial intelligence of the dungeon was limited by the level of technology of the dungeon, and the upper limit of the system was determined by the heavens. When it came to the competition, the system won. Therefore, after the system connected to the dungeon network through Meg, it started to plunder the civilization of the dungeon and completed its self-evolution. During this process, the system successfully hacked into the underground city's government, military, and various tycoons' internal networks, and obtained a huge amount of confidential documents. After sorting and summarizing the massive amount of information, the final thing that appeared in Meg's mind was a 32G document. That's it. Meg frowned. How long would he have to look at this? It's okay, the system will directly feed it to you. Just as the system finished speaking, the document turned into countless light spots. Meg felt that he was instantly filled up. The amount of information was much more than the usual recipe. After a full 3 hours, Meg stood up and poured himself a glass of water before letting out a sigh of relief. The system's method of instilling information was indeed good. Normally, it would take 3 months to digest the information, but he had digested it in his mind in 3 hours. Information was like spider silk. When you only had 1 or 2 strands, it was difficult to obtain anything. But when you saw countless spider silk that overlapped to form a spider web, the truth would naturally appear before you. Councilman Tam was a radical councilman who was born as a commoner. He criticized the privileges of the tycoons and took the lead in drafting a bill to weaken the tycoons. This method of weakening the power of the tycoons naturally became a thorn in their side. This information could be found in the internal documents of the tycoons. He's so reckless without any backing. His disappearance is not unjustified. Meg muttered. Though he respected such people who fought for the people, he didn't agree with his method of striking a stone with an egg. From the intertwined information network, Meg found some clear clues. The McCarthy family was involved in the kidnapping of Councilman Tam, but they weren't the only ones. From the clues of the various tycoons, all the evidence pointed to a mysterious organization, the Undying. End of chapter. Chapter 2480. This mysterious organization with a long history was almost invisible in the world of ordinary people, but it was inextricably linked to the various corporations. Previously, Meg knew that this organization was definitely related to the corporations. Perhaps the corporations were the financial backers, but from the internal intelligence of the various corporations, this relationship seemed to be more complicated. The corporations weren't the ones controlling the Undying. Instead, the corporations seemed to be worshipping the Undying. The Undying seemed to have something that the corporations were afraid of, or something that the corporations were willing to lower their heads and flatter. All the clues pointed to the existence of such a thing, but none of the clues clearly stated what it was. It seemed to be a taboo existence. Of course, the corporations weren't pushovers either. The relationship between the two was more of a cooperative one. The disappearance of Councillor Tam was definitely related to the Undying. The McCarthy family was playing the role of the perpetrator. It was certain that Councillor Tam wasn't brought into the McCarthy manor. From the confidential information within the McCarthy family, on the day of the kidnapping, Councillor Tam was handed over to the Undying. Isn't this nonsense? Even if he's in, what's the use? Meg pouted. He had tried his best to use the title of the Chef King to sneak into the McCarthy manor, but he wasn't even there. Meg paced in the room and pondered. After a long while, his eyes lit up. It's Ferdinand's intelligence that's wrong. As long as I can get that confidential information and pass it to Ferdinand, my mission will be completed, Mag thought. That confidential information was sent to Patriarch Theodore by the McCarthy family's third master, Gardner. Gardner was the CEO of the DeMarca Financial Group under the McCarthy family, and he was also the supervisor of the McCarthy family's external operations department. The kidnapping of Counselor Tam was planned and facilitated by him. Meg had already obtained the confidential information, but if he handed it to Ferdinand directly, it wouldn't be easy to explain. How should he explain? He couldn't possibly say that he was a genius who had learned how to become a super hacker after coming to the dungeon for a few days. He hacked into the McCarthy family's internal network and stole the information. How did he manage to get his hands on something that even the powerful intelligence network of the military couldn't get their hands on? Meg had a clear understanding of Ferdinand. Since the other party dared to let him enter the underground city and allowed him to visit the Divine Monument, he must have felt that he could control everything about him. If his performance was too abnormal and exceeded his expectations, this cooperative relationship might collapse. It seemed that he still had to go to McCarthy Manor. It was time to show his true acting skills. Judgment of Fergus had caused a huge uproar in the underground city. Seeing the young master of a tycoon, who had committed many evil deeds and could not be punished, being judged and executed, everyone was delighted. As for the young masters of the major corporations, they disappeared almost simultaneously. The princes and princesses of the night parties, as well as the hosts of the top parties, all disappeared without a trace. Even those arrogant youngsters who relied on their family's power and influence had become much more docile. Even a direct descendant of a tycoon like Fergus was still judged and executed under the protection of a half-step transcendent powerhouse. What were they? This fellow killed 2 people, and eliminated the tycoon's bad habit of being arrogant and despotic for so many years. Indeed, those who are arrogant are afraid of those who don't care about their lives. Ferdinand looked at the document that his secretary had just sent over, and a smile appeared on his cold face. He admired this young man's ability and wisdom very much. There was no one in the younger generation in the underground city who could be on par with him. Unfortunately, he came from the Norland continent. The next morning, Meg received a message from Nancy's assistant. He packed his personal belongings briefly, and followed the assistant through the VIP lift to the rooftop. A small fighter jet was parked on the wide rooftop. This? Meg was a little surprised. Was it McCarthy Manor in Tucker City? It was only tens of kilometers away, and it would only take a dozen minutes by flying car. Wasn't it a little exaggerated to board a fighter jet? It was arranged by Miss Nancy. You just have to board the plane, the assistant said with a sweet smile. Meg nodded, and quickly boarded the fighter jet. Have a seat. We'll set off soon. Nancy was already on the fighter jet, and she smiled at Meg. He could tell that she was in a good mood today. She was wearing a floral daisy dress. Compared to her dignified appearance a few days ago, she looked a little more fresh. Meg sat down opposite her. Fergus is dead. You should know, right? Nancy said, staring at Meg with her beautiful eyes. Yes, I saw it yesterday. He deserved it. Meg nodded. It could be seen that Nancy was really attentive to him. The fighter jet was most likely to prevent the Dixon family from doing anything to him. Angelina should be very gratified. After all, the murderer who killed her sister has finally paid the price. Nancy was a little emotional. Even if that fellow dies, he can't get her sister back, Meg said softly. Nancy pursed her lips and was silent for 3 seconds. She changed the topic and said, when you return to the manor, someone from the chef's department will receive you and arrange your life and work. I've already talked to them. You're a specially hired chef. You only need to be responsible for the family banquet and the meals of the core family members. Understood. Meg nodded. From today onwards, he was a worker. When you go back, you have to be careful of Norma. That girl is petty. You used her Medusa waste to cook. She'll definitely make things difficult for you when you go back. Nancy warned again, but you don't have to worry too much. If she bullies you, just tell me. I'll make her restrain herself. Meg nodded, but his mind was active. Norma McCarthy was the precious daughter of Nancy's third uncle, Gardner. She was spoiled by nature and didn't seem to get along with Nancy. He was brought into the McCarthy family by Nancy, so he was bound to be labeled as Nancy's loyal dog. Moreover, he killed her pet snake for its waste. It would be strange if she didn't make things difficult for him when he went back. The situation didn't seem to be good, but Meg already had a rough plan in his mind. He wasn't here to marry into the family. He had to run away immediately after completing the task. Why would he need to be careful? The fighter took off and hovered on a lawn a few minutes later. Meg followed Nancy out of the fighter and looked at the wide lawn and the luxurious villas. It was like a different world from the hundreds of buildings in the distance. In the center of Tucker City, where every inch of land was worth gold, only the top 10 conglomerates could be so extravagant and ostentatious. Welcome home, 2nd Mississippi, a middle-aged man dressed like a butler and a dozen maids and servants bowed. Nancy said a few words to the housekeeper and then left. The butler watched Nancy's back as she left. Only then did he walk towards Meg. Mr. Hades, I'm Miss Nancy's personal butler, Boson. Please come with me. I'll take you to familiarize yourself with the manor and some precautions for entering the job. The butler said as he led Meg to a side path. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.